a scientist, and Julia is a school secretary, or she was. Richard also has an older sister named Kate. He and his family all resided in a large detached home in Wormit, which is a village in northeast Fife, Scotland. As a child, he played football and tennis for the local club. He reported to have had a happy childhood. He attended Madras College, where he became very interested in pursuing a career in drama. He then enrolled at Glasgow University and completed a degree in English literature and theatre. After that, he attended Oxford School of Drama for 1 year and graduated in 2012. He went on to create one-man comedy shows for Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Now let me just tell you what that is. It is the world's largest performance arts festival, which takes place in Edinburgh. You know what? I'm pronouncing Edinburgh wrong. Is it Edinburgh? Is that how you say it? I'm so sorry. So anyway, it takes place there every August and has become a world-leading celebration of arts and culture, surpassed only by the Olympics and the World Cup in terms of global ticketed events. It is an open-access performing arts festival, meaning that anyone may participate with any type of performance. So anyway, Richard Gadd started doing comedy shows at this festival in 2013 with titles such as Cheese and Crack Whores, Breaking Gadd, Waiting for Gadot, and Monkey See, Monkey Do, to name a few. He won many awards for his work and toured the UK with some of his shows. He has also worked as an actor in several BBC dramas, and he has worked as a screenwriter for Netflix's show Sex Education, as well as some other lesser-known TV and radio shows. He is currently an ambassador for upset. And he asks her, what she wants, and she says she doesn't have any money. So he gives her a free cup of tea. And that is how he believes his whole mess began. That one moment of kindness, he felt bad for this sad stranger, and he gave her a free cup of tea. And at that moment, her eyes lit up, and she began to just jibber-jabber, tell him everything, keep talking and talking and talking. She said that first day that she is a lawyer, which he thought was weird since she didn't have any money. And she went on to brag about her past work, how she has worked with so many famous clients. Now after that day, she just kept coming back, and she would sit at the bar for hours on end, talking. Now he was never attracted to her. Not really. At that point, he mostly felt bad for her. She nicknamed him Baby Reindeer, but he didn't find out why until later, and I won't tell you yet. So, it doesn't take long to become apparent that she is obsessed with him, and she starts sending him hundreds of flirtatious emails, which are just filled with misspellings or typos and just nonsense, and like I said, flirtatious, sometimes a little bit, dirty stuff. And at the bottom of the email, it always says, "Sent from my iPhone." But she doesn't have an iPhone, so it seems she just typed that in. So he's curious, he looks her up online, and he finds out that she's been convicted and imprisoned in the past for stalking. So he's frightened a bit, but still, he doesn't put his foot down. He doesn't try to, close her out of his life. And things get out of hand. One day he even took her out for coffee. He really didn't want to, he was reluctant to do it, but she was, pressuring him, so he took her out for coffee. And in the middle of it, she just started carrying on and created a huge scene, and, he definitely regretted that. But he will later admit that there was a piece of him that enjoyed all the attention that she was giving, and he didn't really think that she was physically dangerous. So she starts attending all of his comedy shows. He didn't tell her about them or invite her. She just shows up and she heckles him. And he was already having so much trouble, struggling to get people to laugh. People were not liking his shows. They were just very silent in the audience. And then she would show up and start heckling him and make it worse. One day, she attacked his girlfriend. Her name in the show was Terry, and she was a transgender psychotherapist. So Martha attacked Terry one day and yanked out a huge clump of her hair, but no police report was made. And one day, a different day, Martha slammed a drink glass in Donnie, aka Richard Gadd's, face, and he still didn't report it. Supposedly, the other workers at his bar where it happened were encouraging him not to report it. Although it injured him. So reportedly, over about 4 years, she followed him. She would sit outside of his house at a bus stop and watch his house. She sent him a total of 41,071 emails, 744 tweets, 48 Facebook brain is giving him a lot of drugs, including GHB, and he blacks out at times, and he is essayed by Darian, and it is very disturbing. And during that episode, or at the beginning of that episode, they tell you something disturbing is going to happen in this episode. But although he is distraught by the essay, he chooses not to cut ties, and he keeps going back because he felt like this was his best shot for fame. You know, this guy was going to help him. So this goes on for an unspecified amount of time. Now returning back to the present time of the show, okay? He does a comedy monologue one day when he is so distraught about everything that's been going on in his life, and he winds up telling the audience about his stalking, about his past essay, and about his own, sexual confusion. And someone records it, and it goes viral on social media, which basically leads to the fame that he always wanted. Sort of, right? But now Martha has begun harassing his parents, and she threatens to tell his parents what he discussed in that monologue. And at first he doesn't really, he hasn't told them any of this stuff. But he decides, you know what, I'm gonna go tell them before she does. And, he goes to their home and he tells them everything that's happened to him, and they are surprisingly very supportive. So finally, Donnie decides to go to the police with what's been going on and tells them that Martha has been stalking him and threatening his parents, and it took a while, but finally they do wind up, arresting her and charging her, and near the end of the show, she actually admits to the court that it's all true. Everything that he has said about her is true. She is convicted of stalking and harassment and is sentenced to 9 months in prison. Now, after she goes to jail, he doesn't see her again or speak to her again, but he is obsessed with the thought of her, and he begins organizing and categorizing all of the things that she has sent him and obsessively listening to her old voicemails. And then he tries to get closure on what happened between him and Darian. He goes to visit this guy, but instead of actually hashing out the past, Darian tells him that he has seen the viral video and offers him a writing job, and he accepts it. But he has a bit of a panic attack, and then he goes to a pub and he starts listening to the voicemails from Martha, and she explains why she called him baby reindeer. It is because when she was little, she had a stuffed animal that she would hug when her parents fought, and it was the only positive memory from her childhood. And as he listens to this, he starts to cry. The bartender gets him a drink. Donnie realizes that he forgot his wallet, and the bartender feels bad for Donnie and gives him the drink on the house. So at the end, it's like he himself is Martha, right? So that is the show. Okay. Now, right after the show aired, it was so popular, and people, internet sleuths, wanted to know who all these people are, but mostly who is Martha, okay? And it was so easy for them to figure it out, because during the show, they would put on the screen the actual texts, so the actual emails, the tweets, whatever, that she had written, word for word, with this exact typos and everything, okay? So they looked up one of the tweets. They went to Twitter or X, and they looked up the tweet, and they found the tweet verbatim written to Richard soon as Richard Gadd heard that people were out there speculating on who was Martha and also Darian, people were trying to figure out who Darian was as well. And they decided that he was someone named Sean Foley, okay, which is someone that Richard Gadd has worked with, and he insists that is not Darian. So anyway, Richard Gadd went on Instagram and he said the following, quote, "Hi everyone, people I love, have worked with, and admire, including Sean Foley, are unfairly getting caught up in speculation. Please don't speculate on who any of the real-life people could be. That's not the point of our show," end quote. Now, in early May of this year, in a session of Parliament, the Netflix policy chief named Benjamin King told the lawmakers that the show took, quote, "every reasonable precaution in disguising the real-life identities of the people involved in that story," end quote. King said Netflix didn't want to totally anonymize the characters because that would undermine the, quote, "veracity and authenticity of the show." Quote, "Ultimately, it's obviously very difficult to control what viewers do, particularly in a world where everything is amplified by social media. I personally wouldn't be comfortable with a world in which we decided it was better that Richard was silenced and not allowed to tell the story," end quote. So that's what he told Parliament. Now, Piers Morgan. If you've never heard of Piers Morgan, he is a very famous British journalist. There's a lot of controversy around him. He was fired some years back from the morning show that he worked on in England. He is seen as kind of like a right-wing type of person, I believe. Like, if you are from England, let me know more. Why is he so controversial? I believe a lot of it has to do with like his homophobia and transphobia and things like that. So anyway, he has his own YouTube channel and a show that he does called Uncensored. So he invited Fiona onto his show right away to, tell her story. And she had said she wanted to come on the show because she believed that Piers would, hear her out. He would be fair to her. So one of the first things she said when she came on the show was that she has not watched the series, which I find to be astounding. She's claiming that the story is all false, but she says she's never watched it. So how can she say that? She's saying she's heard from various sources about it, but how can she say she hasn't watched it? And if she hasn't watched it, what could she possibly be complaining about, right? Alright, so anyway, she claimed that Gadd did not offer her a cup of tea when she walked into the pub. Quote, "That's not correct. I was in for a meal with a drink of lemonade and I was very, very hungry. I'm diabetic, so very hungry. So that's true. if somebody was sending somebody 41,000 emails or something, they'd be doing how many a day? Lots. I don't think I sent him anything. No. I think there may have been a couple of emails exchanging, but that was it. Just jokey banter emails. She claimed that she sent him, quote, less than 10 emails rather than 41,000. She said she messaged him on Twitter about 18 times and sent him one handwritten letter. She believes that he forged the other 105. When she was asked if she went to his comedy shows and heckled him, she said, quote, why would I do that? No, no, no. I don't generally go to comedy shows, end quote. She denied attacking his girlfriend. She said she never sat outside of his house for hours. She never contacted his parents, and she never was sentenced to prison for 9 months for harassment. She said, quote, that's completely untrue. Very, very defamatory to me. Very career damaging. And I wanted to rebut that completely on this show. I'm not a stalker. I've not been to jail. I've not got injunctions. This is just complete nonsense. End quote. She said she's considering taking legal action against Gadd and Netflix. And when she said, as I told you before, she said she never watched the show. About that, she said, quote, I think I'd be sick. It's taken over enough of my life. I find it for sure. Now, some people have suggested that all the drugs and mental health problems that Richard Gadd had may have contributed to some of this not really being true, like he might think it is. He might have hallucinated or something. But then again, we can say, what does the term true story really mean when it comes to, TV series? Like, what does it mean when they say this is a true story? A captivating, true story. Like, that was part of the appeal of the show, I believe. Because if you were told it was complete fiction, you'd be like, yeah, okay, interesting. But when you're told this really happened, that makes you really, really want to see what happens next. Like, this really happened to this guy. Like, whoa, this is absolutely crazy. Like a stranger than fiction, But as you watch it, you have to realize that some of it is obviously fictionalized, and I don't think that Richard Gadd would argue, about some of these parts. Like, for example, at the end, when he, turns into Martha, when he goes into a bar, and he's crying, and he gets a free drink, that couldn't have happened. It's too much of a coincidence. That's just kind of artistic, like he said, that didn't happen. So, when they say true story, shouldn't they have a disclaimer? Some of this has been changed, blah, 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 whatever. They don't give a disclaimer like that. Like, they should have, if it's not all true. Now, one thing that we can all agree on is that Fiona Harvey's reputation has been extremely damaged. I mean, whether or not she deserves that, is up for argument. But for sure, this show has destroyed her reputation. And part of it she's done herself because she voluntarily went on Piers Morgan's show and really did not look good on there with the things that she was saying. Does it seem that maybe a lot of it is true, but yet it has been exaggerated? Which wouldn't really be fair to Fiona Harvey, right? Like, supposing she had harassed him to a certain extent, she had sent him a ton of emails and followed him around and, done a lot of this stuff. But she had never done anything violent. The numbers weren't as high as they're telling us. She was not arrested. She did not go to jail. What if that was the actual truth, And it was made to look so much worse. I'm not saying that any kind of harassment is good, but if it was hugely exaggerated for the sake of the show, that's not really fair to her, since the world has figured out who Martha is. And did Netflix really believe that the world wouldn't be able to figure out who she was? I mean, when I heard, before all this went nuts, when I was just watching the show, I had heard that the real life Martha was nothing like the Martha on the show. So I was thinking, I'm sure she doesn't look anything like that woman Martha. Well, it turns out she looks exactly like her. Where is the huge disguise that they talked about? And wouldn't a company like Netflix be smart enough to know that people can look up those exact quotes, from the tweets, and find her? The truth is, this whole controversy has made the show even more popular, and they're making even more money. So maybe if there is a lawsuit, it will be worth it to them. I don't know. So to sum up my opinion on the situation, just my opinion, I would say, if I had to guess, but I'm not betting money on it, I would say she has done a lot of what is in the show, but none of the very serious stuff, and she has not gone to prison. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but it is my understanding that she might have a decent case against Netflix was true with the exception of the jail time. Doesn't she have a case? And Netflix cannot keep saying that they did everything they could to protect her identity because she was